Just imagine, you're driving down a road at night similar to this. All of a sudden, an opossum jumps right in front of your car. You have a split decision to make. Do you go or do you stop? Doesn't matter the decision, you end up hitting the opossum. You drive back and walk back to the possum. You look down to the ground and notice that the possum is all mangled up. But inside the pouch is moving, and you notice that there's little babies in there. Sadly, these babies are now orphaned. Just in 2012, which was last year, Operation Wildlife received over 152 possums, most of which were babies, results again of car accidents. Each volunteer at Operation Wildlife must evaluate each individual possum they receive using the standard initial care physical exam. I intend to illustrate this process to my audience through 10 steps. The first step in accepting any animal is to allow the one who brought the animal in to fill out an acquisition form. Here's an example of a blank acquisition form one would fill out. These forms are very useful for not only Operation Wildlife, but also the state to record how many animals are rescued each year. The second step is to check for the body temperature. Possums usually have temperatures that are 3 to 5 degrees warmer than humans' normal temperature, so the baby possums should be warm to touch. If the baby's temperature is 98 to 100 degrees or they are cold to touch, they are experiencing hypothermia. We usually place them on an indirect heat source such as a heating pad to warm them up. After the individual is warm, they are then weighed. Weight is very important because medicines and fluids are all determined by it. They need to be given proper doses. Babies are usually weighed on the gram scale. The weight is then recorded on the acquisition form. Many of the opossums that Owl receive come in with injuries, many of which are due to the car accidents or even dog and cat attacks. When a volunteer is dealing with an injured opossum, the number one thing is to stop the bleeding. Running blood flow from a wound is life-threatening, so they usually apply pressure to the wound to stop the blood flow. Any minor or major lacerations are cleaned and treated. The area is flushed using a sterile saline to remove debris, then the wound is gently scrubbed using a Benadine tea, which is a disinfectant. The area is then rinsed off and a Neosporin is applied. An opossum may come in who has had a recent concussion. Volunteers determine this by looking at the pupils. They use a flashlight to shine into the eyes. If the pupil doesn't react, then the animal has a concussion. Volunteers treat this concussion using Decadron administered by a feeding tube. Here's an example of a feeding tube as well as a syringe used to administer fluids as well as medication and food. Orphans unfortunately do not have the luxury of their mom there to clean them. So this leads us to the 5th steps, checking the animal if it has parasites. The 3 most common parasites include fleas, ticks, and the notorious fly strike, which are maggots living off of necrotic tissue on its host. Once you have determined whether the animal has parasites, hydration status should be your next concern. To determine, gently pinch skin on the back of the neck into a tent position and twist a half turn. If the skin retracts back quickly, the animal is hydrated, but if the position stays, the animal is dehydrated. If the animal is dehydrated, fluids are usually given orally or subcutaneously. Above, you can see an opossum being hydrated using a syringe and feeding tube, and below you can see a opossum being hydrated using a needle and syringe. The 7th step is to check if the animal is suffering from diarrhea. To poop the animal, a volunteer usually wets their finger and gently moves their finger back and forth on the bottom of the animal. If the poop is solid, the animal doesn't have diarrhea. But if a volunteer sees mushy or watery and yellow or green poop, the animal has diarrhea. Further precautions need to be taken. Determining animals' age is very important. It's used to determine the treatments, housing, and feeding appropriate for the age of that animal. Once you have determined the age, the ninth step takes place, and this is preparing the appropriate diet. Babies are usually fed a formula of 1 part formula, 3 parts water mixture, and are tube fed, whereas weaned babies, who are those who are coming off of mother's milk, are drinking formula from a lid and can also eat apples and bananas. The final step is setting up the appropriate housing and caging for that baby. Those who are infant or have not yet hit juvenile stage are placed in a small shoebox with a cloth pouch inside. The cloth pouch mimics the mother's pouch. One side of the box is placed on a heating pad while the other side is on a cooler surface. Weaned animals go inside a plastic crate with a towel placed on the bottom. This is to ensure easy cleanup. Rehabilitating wildlife does have its challenges, but with struggles comes great rewards. After I spent weeks caring for the opossums, watching them from infancy to weaned, during my internship at Operation Wildlife, there was nothing more rewarding than watching them survive to the end and being able to release them back into the wild. We can't stop the number of occurrences between wildlife and humans, but we can at least make the difference in helping the animals survive.